And such a pleasure to be joined by our next guest. He's a four-time Super Bowl champion with the dynasty Pittsburgh Steelers of the 1970s. He also won a national championship with Notre Dame and was a team captain for the Irish as well. Rocky Bleier joining us this morning here on CBS Sports Radio. It's so good to have you here on the show. And, part of your story, you served in Vietnam after being drafted into the military. And recently you went back there, and it was documented by ESPN. And it aired earlier this summer, and it was an extremely emotional visit for you, a really powerful visit, I think, for the viewers as well. How have you been since that visit, the emotions that came up in that visit?
Actually, I've been fine. Going through that experience was very interesting because just a little backstory on it. When I was approached by ESPN to go back to Vietnam and recreate the scenes that had taken place 50 years ago, and I said to them, I do not know what to expect. One is that unlike the majority of returning combat veterans from Vietnam who had to repress their feelings because of how society viewed that conflict and the soldier within that conflict, I said I came back and I was a story. And because of that, they asked me questions that the majority of returning veterans didn't get. How do you feel? What do you think about this? How do you compare, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So it was somewhat of a catharsis going through that period of time. Then obviously over the next several decades, I continued to tell the story. And I said, so I don't really have any demons, I don't think, going back and looking at Vietnam. So when we got back and we were in Da Nang, and we were going back to Hep Duc, and that was the area in which we had our conflict. It was about an hour and a half drive, and consciously, as I was looking at the changes that had taken place, changes that would happen anywhere in this world over 50 years. I mean, there were roadways, there was commerce, there was buildings. There weren't villages and huts. There were now townships and homes. People that were crowded on the roadways and in their automobiles and their motorbikes, and so it just was a hustle and bustle. And I didn't really process it until we were in that rice paddy, and then Tom Rinaldi asked me the question, "How do you feel?" And then all of a sudden, I have to tell you this, all of a sudden, out of left field, this emotional change took place. I mean, it was really like from the bottom of my soul up through my body of an emotion. I mean, it almost flushed my body of fluids, which happened later. But and I just emotionally became overwrought, as you had seen on that documentary. And I couldn't understand it. I didn't know where it came from. And then only in reflection can I say that possibly it came from, as I said in the rice paddy, why? And the reflection was why. Vietnam hadn't changed, except maybe we have better business, international relationships, commerce with Vietnam, but it's still a communist country. It's still a police state. And the question is why? Would this have happened if we had not been there? Possibly so, because 50 years changes things. And we lost 58,000 soldiers during that period of time. For what? We didn't win the war. Was it a treaty that had taken place that we felt that we had upheld with bad leadership in our government? And so that became the emotional why that I couldn't come to terms with. That just zapped my energy, and thus you saw it on the documentary. So for me, after that, it was fine. It was maybe another catharsis. But it also gave me a little insight of what possibly our veterans go through or first responders. When we talk about post-traumatic stress, when we talk about mental illnesses, when we talk about strain, when we talk about suicides, maybe in the pain that they, on a level that I couldn't understand before, maybe it gave.
I encourage anybody to watch it on YouTube. You know, you were cut by the Steelers a couple of. You said that. Was that military trained thinking or just your own?
College, high school, college, ball decisions in which you have to make. And from my perspective, you go, okay, fine, given time, it'll heal. And say you should have, or I could have. Then again, I'm not making it. It's not as if you then have a.
It's been going on all season long, and recently the 78 Steelers.
Well, I suppose this never been done before, never have up until this time. So in the championship game in which we lost, it is 85 Bears. I'll give the 85 Bears because that's the 85. You got it. That's right. So they live on. And it was a good team. It was a great team. In that regards, it's pretty good.
Rocky Bleier, our guest. Let's talk about the best team you were on that didn't win a Super Bowl, huh? 1976. You guys start the season 1-4. You had won back-to-back Super Bowls coming into the season, and then down the stretch, the final 9 games with the season on the line, the defense pitches 5 shutouts, gives up 28 points total over 9 games. That's 3.1 points per game over a 9-game stretch to make the playoffs. And you guys end up winning in the divisional round in a blowout over the Baltimore Colts before losing the AFC title game in Oakland. What was it like to watch the Steel Curtain pull off Mission Impossible?
It was terrific. I mean, I'm telling you this in all honesty. It was terrific to be able to see that. As you were saying, we lost 4 out of our first 5 games. And when you're playing 14 games, I mean, you're behind the 8 ball very quickly, and especially the way that we had been playing. When, Bradshaw gets knocked out of the game in Cleveland by Joe Turkey Jones, and our backup quarterback is a rookie by the name of Mike Krzyzek. So all of a sudden, offensively, we got to pare things down. We have to, establish an easier game plan, not as complicated, and so that we could have a young rookie run that offense. And so that's what they did. A great job done by the offensive line, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But also at the same time, a defense that had been there. Okay, I mean, it had been there since 72 and 3 and Super Bowl in 74, Super Bowl in 75, and the expectations, of maybe being the first team to win 3 Super Bowls in that year of 76 kind of faltered in those first games. And I don't know if it was much as far as the defense or the lack of offense, but we just didn't gel. When all of a sudden they did gel. You heard the statistics that you had just stated. Which was an amazing feat within those 9 games. But what it does is it's 3 and out. I mean, they're on the field less than anybody else. I mean, they're 3 and out, which gives the offense a time to be on the field. And so with a reduced game plan, concentrated on controlling the football, because I think Mike Krzyzek only threw the ball 17 times in those remaining 9 games. And we just ran the ball, ball control, run the clock down, and eventually, win the division that year, go to the playoffs, and we played the Baltimore Colts in a playoff game, and both Franco and I get hurt in that game. But what had happened in that season, because of Joe Turkey Jones, because knocking Bradshaw out, because of a rookie quarterback, because of a great defense, I gain 1,000 yards rushing. And Franco and I become the second set of running backs in the history of the NFL, each to gain 1,000 yards rushing after Zonka and Mercury Morris did it in 72. So I have, so I got some great feelings about that season. But that was, and people like to compare, and I think it was a great season, given all those obstacles that we had to overcome, given the quality of players that didn't really give up, and that got us to the playoffs. And if it wasn't for those two injuries to our running game, I think specifically, we could have gone on, and it would have been a tough game, but I think we could have gone on and been the first team to win 3 Super Bowls in a row.
Rocky Bleier, our guest here on Sunday Morning Football. Who knows what happens if you and Franco are healthy for that AFC title game. What do you think of the job now Mike Tomlin's doing this year with a team missing its quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger and then losing Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown from a season ago?
I think that they are, like a fan, and that's what I've become, and I'm not an analyst at all, but, and I watch the game, and I get frustrated at their accomplishments because I look at the team, I look at the talent of the team, and I look at what could be done and what has been done, and then I get disappointed because there's lapse of constant play that I think that should be there. But, they're sitting in a situation where they're 6-5, within their division. They got a revenge game coming up, obviously, this Sunday, or today, I should say, against Cleveland. And then put them in a position to be able to, start a run at the end of the season. But it's very difficult. I mean, I just know how difficult it is when you have changes and when you have injuries, and when you have people like Ben that gets hurt subconsciously. You're going, yeah, but we're missing Ben, or and Connors isn't there, and Juju's not there, and can we do it? Yeah, now the pressure is on the defense, got to pick up, and they did that last week. They played very well, but they have to do it on a consistent basis, and more of a consistent basis, to be able to allow 2 young quarterbacks, no matter who may start, whether you have the Duck or Mason Rudolph, there is that, can they get the job done? Hopefully, it's like, hopefully they can get the job done. Hopefully we can win, rather than a certainty that it can happen.
Rocky Bleier, 4-time Super Bowl champion with the Steel Curtain Steelers of the 1970s, a national champion with Notre Dame as well. Rocky, it's always really a pleasure to catch up. Every time that we see each other at the Super Bowl or you come on the show, I always really have such a wonderful time with you. So thanks so much for doing it today.
I'll see you down there. Thank you. Thanks for the time. And, it was always great talking to you and being on your show and catching up. So I do appreciate it.